There we go. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's good to have you with us this morning and here at the 11/11 celebration. Nice to have all of you here. If you're here visiting with us, we're especially glad to have you here and visiting. And we invite you, while I'm giving some announcements, just to fill out your little cards. You'll bring those forward at our offering time in just a little bit. And I notice we're not taking advantage as much as the name tagging. I know we had some name tags back there, but I appreciate you all putting that on. We're just trying to have a little bit of a chance to get to know each other by name a little more so I encourage you all to do that from time to time. They're back there. They're up here. If we run out of them, you can always put the one that says I'm with the band because they don't mind. And I don't know if they might enlist you at the last minute to come up and sing with them. So on the back of your bulletin, there's a couple of quick announcements just to highlight. So we're still in the midst of the First Focus survey campaign. We've extended it one extra week, and next week will be the deadline. The survey deadline is this Tuesday, and then next Sunday, November 5th at 9:30 to 10:50. So it'll be actually happening during the morning. I encourage you guys to come early if you haven't done it, and you can join in with the conversations. That'll be up in room 350. At 9:30, and there'll be some, we'll break into small groups and have the small group discussion over some of the topics and some of the questions. We're also in the beginning, we began our Unbounded Generosity Stewardship last week, and Nancy Fisher, our Director of Campaign, our Director of Stewardship, she'll be speaking to us in a little bit, some more about that, but that's happening as well, so just be aware of those things, and then we will be having our Wine and Wishful Thinking gathering again on Monday evening if you'd like to join us for conversations. It's really good to see you all here this morning, so good to have you with us. Let's begin our worship.
The welcome candle has been lit. Please join me in reading our welcome message. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again.
Will you join me now as we prepare our hearts for this time together of community? O Holy One, we open ourselves to you, knowing that we are in this place as wanderers, as people who come seeking and searching, some who have things all together and some who are a mess. We really all are a mess, but we sometimes like to think that we have it all going the way it should. So may we open our hearts and minds on this day to the ways in which you are guiding and directing, the ways in which your Spirit is moving in this room, and so that we might go outside of this place into the world to care for your creation, to offer love and grace to your people, and to offer peace to our world. Come and be among us now. Amen.
Amen. Good morning, folks. Hey, I'm going to ask y'all to stand in a second, but I'm going to tell y'all a funny story. Y'all want to hear it? I play this restaurant on Wednesday nights, and there's a waiter there that I totally love. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. And he told me, he said, man, I'm joining the Air Force in a month, and I'm super pumped. It's all he could think about. He's so excited about joining the Air Force that he was back there at the cash register that's on the way to the restrooms, and one of his tables came by, and the guy walks by him and says, "Thank you for your service." And he was like, "Oh my God, it's happening already." I don't know. And the guy's like, "No, you served us our meal, and you did a fine job." The guy's like, "Oh, okay." Funny. That kind of stuff happens to him all the time. It's funny. I want to invite you guys to stand, and girls, and sing this song with us, would you please? And if you brought an offering, now's a great time to bring it to our table.
And thank you for your service.
Hit it. All together real strong, let's do it.
You may be watching from a safe distance.
You may be so close, you can taste the blood. You may have headed for higher ground. You may be drowning in the flood. Come on. No matter what you do, sing it. I will find you. All right. Verse 2 all together. You may have lost what little faith you have. You may believe with all your heart. You may be pulling yourself together again. You may be falling apart. Oh, no matter what you do, love will find you. All right, to the bridge, come on. One of you sees that love's a long lost friend. One of you can't recognize her face. One of you runs to her with open arms. One of you falls down in disgrace. Verse 3 all together. You may see a million different gateways home. You may think there's only one way through. You may be waiting for the kingdom to come. You may believe it's in you. No matter what you do, love will find you. No matter what you do, love will find you. Love will find you. Come on. Love will find you. Rock and roll church style. There we go. Take a moment, offer one another a sign of peace, would you please?
The mic. Is it on? It's on. Okay. Good morning. I'm Nancy Fisher, and I'm Director of Stewardship, and I've been a member of this community for many years. I don't come a lot as I used to, but you're in my heart. And one of the reasons I love it is not only because of Tom's fine preaching, but also you can't beat the band. So thank you guys. I've been a member of the church since 1994, and I've gone through a lot of different phases in my life, and the church has always been here for me. And as far as this year and thinking about what we wanted to do as far as a stewardship campaign, we came up with the ideal of unbounded generosity, and actually this is what this gathering is all about. There is a lot of love in this room. And so for that and for all that each of you do to make this spot happen, I thank you. I know Brad spoke last week from his heart, and I just want to encourage you to think about how important 1111 is to you, but also how important First Church is. When we talk about the stewardship campaign, I'll be honest, it is about committing to raising dollars for our 2018 operations. It's not very exciting to talk about budgets or turning the lights on. But in reality, that's what we've got to do. And it is because every Sunday morning, someone comes in and turns the lights on so that you can come and join us and be in fellowship together. Whether you choose to do it here or across the way or down up in 350, or whether you've got kids that are being talked to about Christ and how Christ will change their life, you know, it all is going to happen because of the unbounded generosity of each and every one of you. I don't want you to be afraid to make a commitment. When we ask you to sign a commitment card, you've got one in the mail, hopefully this week, along with a great publication of Connect. And I want you to think about how much this church means to you. It's not about the size of the gift. It's not about really talking about what pressure it might be on you to make a gift. What I want you to think about is how you can practice unbounded generosity and really make this church not only a place for you, but for all the other people that will be coming in our doors in the next few months. And so if you have questions about it, I really encourage you to call me. I encourage you to grab a magazine. I encourage you to think about it and pray about it, and then do what your heart tells you and show your love. So thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for your unbounded generosity.
We have two scriptures we're going to reflect on this morning. The first is from Exodus. And God spoke these words to Moses: "Respect your father and your mother, and you will live a long time in the land I am giving you. Do not murder. Be faithful in your marriage. Do not steal. Do not tell lies about others." And from Luke 18, a certain ruler asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother." He replied, "I have kept all of these since my youth." And when Jesus heard this, he said to him, "There's still one thing lacking. Sell all that you own and distribute the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And then come follow me." But when he heard this, he became sad, for he was very rich. And Jesus looked at him and said, "How hard is it for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God? Indeed, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." And those who heard this said, "Then who can be saved?"
I recommend getting your heart trampled on to anyone. Yeah, oh yeah. I recommend walking around naked in your living room. Yeah, swallow it down. What a jagged little pill. It feels so good swimming in your stomach. Wait until I say, you live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you breathe, you learn, you scream, you learn. I recommend biting off more than you can chew to anyone. I certainly do. I recommend sticking your foot in your mouth to any time. Oh, I feel free. Throw it down. Caution blocks you from the wind. Oh, have to eventually anyway. The fire trucks soar, coming round the bend. You live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn. You grieve, you learn, you choke, you learn, you laugh, you learn, you choose, you learn, you pray, you learn, you last, you learn, you love, you learn.
What a wonderful song. This idea that we know what we ought to do, we know what we ought not to do, and yet thank God for grace and thank God that we learn. Everything that we do in here, we sort of talk about the ways in which we create connections or find connections, and so I've decided to start doing different things throughout the service. There'll be unusual objects here and there, and maybe you'll start to put those together as well. This morning we're finishing up. Next week I'm actually going to complete the series on the Ten Commandments, and I want to talk about Sabbath time. It's something that I don't take enough of. I don't know if you do, but I think it's probably perhaps the most critical. Certainly metaphorically in the creation story, there's one whole day out of 7 committed towards this idea of rest. And yet I think it's true for us that in our busy week schedule, in our completely 24/7 online reality, that we take less and less time that's really set aside to remember how to connect again. And that's the challenge of all of these texts, I think. That's really what these commandments are about, learning how to connect. Now we think they're really more about rules. Don't do this, don't do that. But the reality is we understand that, right? We understand that concept. But still, with these things, we live in fear. So I was thinking the other day about Amazon, because I do everything with Amazon now. Amazon is sort of like my third best friend. And it's always there when I need it. At any hour, at any time, I can order something and it will show up, sometimes that same day. So it's just like this wonderful addiction. And yet there's this other side of Amazon that kind of worries me. It kind of reminds me of something that I don't like to be reminded of. I don't know if you saw the most recent device that they've got, this thing called Amazon Key. Right now, because maybe you experienced this, or some of you knew about this kind of thing. We had a little bit of this happening in our neighborhood. You got your package out there, it's delivered, and then before you get home, it's not there. So now Amazon's constantly getting these calls when their package may just be delayed, but now you think it's been stolen. And then we're in a neighborhood association online, and so we've got all of these suspicious things happening. There's a person walking down the sidewalk. Keep your eyes open. I mean, you just have this suspicious kind of reality because things have disappeared now. We just get connected. We get tied. We start clinging to these things that we buy and that we own, and we worry about them getting stolen. And so Amazon Key is there. And the way that it works, of course, is wonderful, because what you do is you now have a padlock and a Wi-Fi system built into the lock, and it's installed on your door. So now that the delivery person can come into your house at any time they want to and deliver the package. Who feels wonderful about that? Now, I don't know if we'll do well. I mean, it's very convenient, and we love convenience. But now we've got this real test to see how much we'll trust this new sort of relationship with the very thing we're afraid of happening. We're going to just willy-nilly give permission now for folks to do it. So, but Amazon has these wonderful things. And my granddaughter has been enjoying, my granddaughter Molly is in town with my daughter-in-law Emily, who's sitting over here. And Emily, and they're in town town from Germany, and of course we have Amazon's Alexa, we have Echo, and we love Echo. We just say, Echo, we say, Alexa, what's the weather like? Alexa, what is the flash news for today? I mean, it's just wonderful. So Molly comes in, and she's like 4 going on 5, and she comes in, and she's like, Alexa, and she just throws out anything, right? Play wah, 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 wah. And Alexa will play something. But what she's really found wonderful is that she can then say, Alexa, stop, and it stops, right? So then she'll look at Dado and she'll say, Dado, say something. And I'll start talking, Dado, stop. And she's been having so much fun with it, now I can't wait to see what happens when she goes back to school, right? And the teacher's up there talking, right? And it's like, stop. It's not working anymore. So, we have this idea of ease and comfort, but also concomitant with that, so hand-to-hand, is this idea of theft, of mistrust, that things get taken from us. Things are out of sync. And I was telling a friend recently that we're going to be going to Germany to visit them, sometime during the Christmas holiday, and I was saying, like, it's going to be wonderful. We get to see all the Christmas market in Germany. And you've heard about the Christmas markets in Germany. It's just amazing. And my friend said to me, you be careful. That's where those terrorists ran over all those people. And I said, oh my gosh, that's right. And for just a moment, I fell right into it, right? I'm not going to, I said, wait a minute. There are hundreds of Christmas markets. Which one? And they looked at me and they said, doesn't matter, you should just be scared. That's our go-to position. It's our default place. We go there naturally. We go to mistrust, we go to scared, we go to doubt, we go to self-sabotage. It's our natural default position because of our DNA and our makeup. And so these commandments come in here and they say these don't do this, don't do that, but there's something behind there that we're not really understanding that I think is a problem for many of us. You remember when you were a child, and your mom or your dad said, don't do this, and what was the first thing you wanted to go do? Right? It's something about this whole don't do's that I'm more concerned about wanting to then suddenly go try that. It's like telling the child to stop running, and they stop for a second, but now they don't know what other option there is. Stop or run, stop or run. Something else is missing, something's out of sync. My uncle and a buddy of his, a hunting buddy of his, were telling me this story. My uncle told me this story. It happened to him years back. But he said that he was at an intersection over on Camp Bowie. And they're hunting buddies, so they were out, and I don't remember which part of Camp Bowie, but they were at this intersection, and they were eating at this little cafe, or it might have been even a stop and go. But he said they happened to look out the window, and they saw a strange sight. They saw a badger in the middle of the street. Now, Rivercrest is not too far away. There's the levees, there's the river, the river tributary and stuff. And he said, we saw this badger, and it was sort of like this badger was just standing there in the intersection, stunned. Like, how did I get here? What am I supposed to do? And it wasn't moving. And my uncle looked at his buddy Luke and said, well, we got to go save that badger. Now, normally, if the badger were out in the woods, they might have a rifle with them. But here, this was completely out of place. This just didn't make sense. So I said, we got to do something. We got to go save this badger. And traffic was moving this way and that badger was just stuck. So they dodged in through the traffic, and then they tried to get on either side of it, but that badger saw 2 other animals coming toward it and immediately did what a badger would do. And it reared up with its claws and its jaws, and my uncle said, we kind of backed off at that point. And yet, here was this badger. So one of his buddies that was there at the store said, well, I've got an old box. If you can trap the badger in the box, we'll rush it off to the zoo or to the nearest woodsy area, and we'll drop it off. And so that's what they did. My uncle said they got on either side of this badger and rushed it with this sort of FedEx box, They kind of rushed towards it, and the other guy came at it from behind, and the badger dodged into the box. They quickly flipped it over. My uncle's like, what do I do with it now? And they got Scotch tape because that's all they could find, and they just taped it up as fast as they could. And then they set it on the side, on the little bus stop bench right there. And the 2 of them went around to get the car while the other one went inside to wherever this place to look for like an address. They're going to look for the address of the local Humane Society or something, animal protection. And as soon as they turned around and looked out the window, a station wagon raced up next to this bus stop, grabbed the FedEx box, threw it inside the car, and sped off. And my uncle said that his buddy looked at him and said, "Mac, that poor little guy." And my uncle looked back at him and said, "Poor little guy? Those stupid thieves have no idea what's going to happen when a badger figures out it can get through a FedEx box pretty easily." I mean, things can get out of sync, right? They just get completely out of balance and out of whack, and then we try to stop it, we try to do something. But the reality is that we find ourselves in the midst of life often out of sync. Usually it's not so funny. Usually it's a relationship. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's with our partner. Maybe it's with our child, our adolescent child, our young adult child, our adult child. Maybe it's just an average day encounter. But things often feel out of sync, and how to respond to them becomes a challenge. We go to our default place, which is oftentimes out of fear, and we end up doing what Paul the Apostle says when he wrote in Romans, "I do that which I ought not do, and then I ought not do that which I always end up doing." And he says, "I don't understand." And then he says, "My body just has control of me." Well, of course, he was talking out of a dualistic mindset of an ancient Greek understanding, but the reality was he's probably right. Our bodies are in control. We do operate out of this reality of our genetics and of our basic instinct to go towards fear. But we know why, even though we sometimes will say we don't understand why. But it's the why that we did something we clearly knew we shouldn't have done in the first place that often has us befuddled with a kind of dumbfoundedness. Tell me to stop doing something self-destructive or other destructive or divisive or self-sabotaging, and I personally won't be able to stop those actions until I begin to understand something very important, and that is that it's not about me. And that's always the hardest place to go, is to recognize it's not about me, because of course it's about me. It's about my fear. It's about my anxiety. It's about my impression that I give you, and whether or not you like what I do, or whether or not I'm successful. Of course, it's all about me. And that's where we find ourselves when Jesus is telling his listeners. You remember when he told his listeners, he said, after a whole day of talking about blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers, and he said this thing, he said, and then he added, "You've heard it said long ago, don't kill, don't murder. But I tell you, when you hate someone, you've already committed murder in your heart." Remember that? Now wait a minute, what? I mean, couldn't you hear that if you're just sitting there and you knew the law, because you were supposed to know the law, you're a good Jew, you knew the law. He says, all right, you've heard that, don't commit murder, don't kill, all right. If you hate somebody, you're already killing in your heart. Now they're sitting there going, now wait a minute. Not at all. Excuse me. I hate this guy right here. He's still here. He didn't die. I'm just using you as an example. I know it. I'm sorry. Feels weird, doesn't it? Feels like, what? No, you don't. But the reality is that's not what Jesus is saying at all. What Jesus is saying, it's not about him. Right? You're already killing yourself. That's where we miss the point. He's not saying if you hate someone in your heart, you're already committing murder, you're killing them. You're killing yourself, because you're already slamming down the door on that connection. You're already solidifying that separation, that God flows at the ground and root of all things. And when we fail to act on that and we fail to see that, we're already committing those crimes, so to speak, in our hearts. We're already separating ourselves. Marcus Bryant, one of my Doxy, come on up here with your thing. Marcus Bryant, one of my psychology professors in seminary, used to say this, and you've heard me say this time and time again. He said, the biggest challenge that people face and it's true for all people. He taught at the Bright Divinity School, by the way. He said the biggest challenge for all people is that everyone, doesn't matter what their background, doesn't matter if they've forgotten and they're filled with hate and violence and revenge and judgment, it doesn't matter. It's that everyone longs to know their source. Everyone longs to be connected, to have this sense of belonging. I used to talk about that idea that we all wear the little sign on our shirt that says, love me, right? Just love me. That's all I need. I don't really need you to do anything else. Just love me. And everybody's wearing it. Marcus Bryant said it's the deepest seated longing in our hearts. Think how amiss things are because we don't recognize that. Because so much of our culture is bent on reinforcing the disconnect. All right, I guess we're going. Nothing worse than an accordion and a guitar out of tune. So this is a song that Peter Mayer wrote. It's a great song for this season because of what's coming up this week, but it's also a great song to remind us that sometimes the biggest challenge for us is to begin to question presumptions enough. And sometimes that requires us going a little dark. Sometimes it requires us going a little bit silent, questioning, beginning to explore scary territory, to begin to open up to the possibility that it's all right and that everything's going to be okay as long as we remember that connection. So here's a wonderful little song called The Dark. Edgar Allan Poe had it in his telltale heart. It's the finest time to strike, said Napoleon Bonaparte. And inmates make their break into it, cavemen make their art. Sky planes fly and spelunkers hunker somewhere in the dark. Batman catches criminals in the dark of night, saving Gotham City from evil's design. Darkness, lovers loving and dreamers tend to like. And if you think you're neither one, well, in the dark, that's just what you might become. Some celestial bodies like to strut their stuffs a lot, but we know Mr. Old Black Hole is the big boy on the block. But we know that King Tut, he looked pretty comfort in that old dark tomb. What's good for an Egyptian mummy? Well, it might be right for you. What's the fun in relying on something you can't begin to see? That's just so passé when you run toward the light. Why not make a dangerous tryst with mystery? It's downright frightening, whole, watch your head, but down you go. What's the fun relying on something you can't see? That's just so passé when we run to the light. Why not make a dangerous tryst with mystery? It's a downright frightening hole, so watch your head, down you go. Larry lost his inhibitions, Sally left a spark. Jacob saw a mystic vision somewhere in the dark. Black cats eke out a decent living, monsters make it far. You might find just what you're missing somewhere in the dark. That's the challenge for us, I think, sometimes, is to begin to stop and to question. There was this story I heard from a missionary in Kenya that I'd like to kind of close with here as we think about this idea of connection. And apparently, in the oldest of traditions, it's not that unusual. We see it in our own communities when we have a meal together and we all bring food, and we come from different families, households, but we all bring something into the pot and sort of have a feast together, a covered dish, supper, or whatever. But there they have a celebration once a year that would happen in the fall that would celebrate their community, the harvest. It would celebrate all that they're about. And they had a special wine that I was told it was called palm wine. It's colorless, it's odorless, but it's a little bit difficult to acquire. And so anyone that would get out into the palm trees and they would find this wine, they would each collect at least one jug, maybe a couple of jugs of it if they could. But they'd save it for this one occasion. And so the chief calls all the group together and says, we will have a feast tomorrow, and we're going to bring all of our palm wine and have a great punch together. And we'll drink from it, a common bowl together, and we'll celebrate this common celebration with all of our palm wine contributed. Now, it was a pretty important delicacy. And you can imagine that from time to time, someone's bound to lose their sense of focus. Someone's bound to fall a little bit out of sync. It seems to happen in communities all the time when we forget where we are, or what we're a part of. And so certainly, sure enough, one fellow goes back to his hut and he starts to think, there's a fair number of people in this community. All I have to do is bring my jug tomorrow, but if I fill it with water, nobody would know the difference. I could enjoy the palm wine myself. Maybe I'll have some of my family enjoy it with me. We'll have a pre-celebration celebration. Made perfect sense to him. And so he went and got his jug, and he celebrated that night. Then that next morning early, when no one was watching, he went down to the stream, filled it with clear water, and happily made his way towards the festivities, thinking to himself, no one will ever know. Everything will be just fine, even though my jug will be filled with water instead of wine. So he poured it into the pot. Everyone else poured theirs into the pot. They stepped back. The chief took his cup, dipped it in. Then everyone else followed suit, took a cup and dipped it in, and then waited for the chief's pronouncement, his celebration, his toast to the whole community, to the importance of the community, to how life moves forward when we remember to stay connected. And then they all put the cups to their mouths, and their eyes looked a little surprised as they turned to look at each other, not so much suspicious, maybe a little guilty. Because every single one of them did the same thing and thought the next one would not. And what they tasted was not wine at all, but water. No one will ever know. It'll taste just fine. Mine will be the only one that doesn't make a difference. We think that in terms of everything we do, not just being a part of community here at church, but in terms of everything we do. We sort of pass by those momentary opportunities when our heart might flutter a little bit and say, maybe I should respond to this. Or maybe this kind of makes me excited. I wonder if I ought to jump in and do something. That's how those little libraries got started, by the way, in case you didn't know. Those little book libraries that are in residences. Because one guy loved books so much and realized there wasn't a library nearby, he just acted on his joy. When's the last time you acted on your joy in a way that added to community? That's what our opportunity today is. The rich man says, I just want to inherit life, eternal life. Do you know what he's actually saying? He's not saying heaven. He's saying, I just want to feel like I'm a part of things deeply. And Jesus says, well, you know the commandments. And the guy says, I do those righteously. And then Jesus says, something's missing. Something's disconnected. Something there that you're longing for. But in order to get there, you're going to have to sell everything and then start following me. He wasn't talking about money. What is it that keeps you from experiencing that sense of connection? Maybe it's your own self-doubt. Maybe it's your own anxiety about succeeding. Maybe it's your own fear. There are so many things we cling to that until we learn to let go of them, we will never experience the very thing we long for. Amen.
Got a package full of wishes, a time machine, a magic wand, a globe made out of gold. No instructions or commandments, laws of gravity or indecisions to uphold. Printed on the box I see, Acme's built a world to be. Take a chance, grab a piece, help me to believe it. What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start. Build a masterpiece. Be careful what you wish for. History starts now. Should there be people or peoples? Money, funny pedestals for fools who never pay. Raise your army, choose your steeples. But don't be shy, the satellites can look the other way. Loose the earthquake, keep the thoughts, fill the oceans without the salt. Let every man own his own hands. Can you dig it, baby? What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start. Build a masterpiece. Be careful what you wish for. History starts now. The sunlight's on the bridge. Sunlight's on the way. Tomorrow is calling. There's more than this than know. What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start. Build a masterpiece. History starts now. Starts now. Be careful what you wish for. Start now. Start now.
So this morning we are finishing up. We're concluding our service with communion, and it's the churches or the services are doing it church-wide. But it seemed really appropriate this morning for us to have this chance to be in communion together. So I'm going to invite DeAndre to come on forward and help with the ritual. What I love about this idea of communion is this idea that we are broken for one another. Vulnerability seems to be the key in how we begin to experience that connection with God at the root of all things, with God at the ground, the river that flows through all things, and this idea of being broken as we've had it modeled in Christ's life as well. So I hope you'll participate in this with us this morning. And the band will lead us in a song in just a minute. I invite you to sing along with that or be in a place of reflection as you go back to your seats.
Jesus was always connecting with other people on the journey, with the disciples who he seemed often to be disconnected in many, many ways. No matter where he went, no matter what he did, he was always meeting people. He was always eating with them. He was doing simple acts, nothing that you would think to be just grandiose. He always was very basic in the ways in which he related to one another. As we prepare our hearts to receive this bread and this cup, let us think about the ways in which we can be present for one another. We can offer the sense of community that we find here to the outside world, and where we can begin to believe that we, as people who are a mess, who are broken, have goodness within us that then can begin to have an impact on history, as our song just said, and how we can begin to write the next chapter of what it is that was started so long ago, that we read about through history, through the Bible, and that we can be participants in this world in which God has created and given to us. So on the night in which Jesus gathered in the upper room, he gathered with his best friends, and he took a loaf of bread such as this, and he broke it. And he said, "Take and eat from this, all of you, for this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." After the supper was over, he took a cup such as this, and he looked at each of them, knowing that they were not perfect, knowing that they would betray him in just the next few hours. And he said, "Please take of this cup, take and drink, for this is my blood of the new covenant poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." And so we come to this place knowing that we all come together, not alone, but we are on this journey, we are in it together, and we are stronger when we are together. So know that everyone here is invited. This is not a United Methodist table. This is not the 11:11 table. This is God's table, which means that every single one of us is a child of God, and we are all invited to go forward and to receive.
This is the bread of life, the gift of love. Be blessed.
Love, hear my voice through the silence and the noise. Peace is welcome in, welcome in.
Gift of life. Be filled.
Love, fill my
Gift of life.
heart.
Be filled.
Pull me close when
Gift of life.
I'm apart.
The gift of life. Be filled with peace.
Peace is welcome in, welcome in. Love, be my guide, even as I close my eyes. so that everyone is heard. Love, be here now, be here now. Love is all around, all around.
Right, everybody, let's stand together as we have our blessing. I invite you to sing that wonderful little chorus at the end. I am willing. I love the line in that little chorus. For to be hopeless would dishonor those who've gone before us. There is this sense in which we are connected not only by what we do, but by those who've gone before us and by what we leave beyond us. It is a large, interconnected reality that we live within. And at the heart of it, God invites us to participate. It's interesting this season. I hope you have a fun week this week. I hope you get a chance to go out and get some candy. I hope you've got some masks that you wear besides the one that we're wearing in here this morning. And then maybe take that one off and have some fun and put another one on. Let's pray. Holy One, bless us as we leave this place, that we might be mindful of the ways in which these commandments are not so much prohibitions as much as invitations to be a little more vulnerable to the connections, to stop and ask ourselves, what's missing? What's disconnected here? What are we deeply longing for? What we long for is always at the very heart of our being, and we give thanks for that. We pray this in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen.
I am open
And I am willing, for to be homeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. lift me up to the light of change. Yeah. Thanks. This week, let's catch up.
You made me cry when you said goodbye. That is shame. My tears felt like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame. You broke my heart when you said apart. Ain't that a shame? My tears felt like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame. Oh well, goodbye. Although I'll cry, ain't that a shame? Your tears felt like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame. You made me cry when you said goodbye. Ain't that a shame? My tears felt like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame. Although I'll cry, you say goodbye. Ain't that a shame? My tears felt like rain. Ain't that a shame? You're the one to blame.